Hey everybody, we are back. It is Rochelle and LaShonda. Once again, it is Recovery Month. So we are on tonight. Just want to talk to you guys a little bit. LaShonda, what's going on tonight?
So Rochelle had said that we were going to have, if you caught our little clip earlier today, we talked about a special guest, but we decided to save that until Monday.
Yes.
So tonight we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to go a little bit deeper. It's Friday night, so we're kind of unwinding a little bit, and we want to get into something a little bit deeper than we have so
Mhm.
far. So, Rochelle, you want to tell them what we're going to talk about?
Yeah. So tonight I'm gonna ask LaShonda some questions. Yes, I'm gonna be in the front asking the questions tonight. And I want to know our topic, of course, is recovery, but how has recovery affected her in her life? What happened, some stories, how it played a part today. Just, just going, like she said, a little bit deeper. So, LaShonda, recovery is this month. And we're talking about recovery in many different forms. So, for you, who in your life was going through recovery and what happened?
Sure. So I want to go back a little bit to give you guys some background as to recovery, why substance abuse disorder, why addiction, and I'm going to go back and forth with the words, okay? Because how it played out when I was growing up, it wasn't called substance abuse disorder; it was called addiction, using that kind of thing. So I'm going to use that verbiage because I'm going to talk about when I was younger. So I grew up with my mom and my grandmother. And my father and my mother, both biological, were young when they had me. They were kids, they were under, what I call under the 25 range. So they were kids. And my dad, that side of the family has a history of addiction.
Okay.
And I didn't understand addiction when I was younger by any
Right.
stretch of the imagination.
Mm-hmm.
I just knew as a little girl that my father wasn't there.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that people would go in the other room and they would kind of whisper about him, or they would talk about other members of his family, like my uncles. And I didn't kind of understand what they were talking about or what it was, because sometimes people would mention alcohol. And I know as a kid going to parties, you see adults drink and things like
Right.
that. So I couldn't make the connection.
But
I
how did you
didn't
feel as a
quite
young kid,
understand.
though? As
Huh?
that young child, knowing something was going on, and it had to do with alcohol, and it's about your dad, what kind of feeling you think you were feeling back then?
Um, I was feeling confused. I was definitely feeling confused. I don't think that, hey, Lennis, I don't think that they had verbiage. I don't think they had words for addiction.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they had words to even, well, I knew they knew addiction, but they didn't have
Mm-hmm.
words to explain it to a child
Right.
so that a child could really understand why your father doesn't show up, why
Mm-hmm.
he says he's coming, he calls, he talks to you on the phone. I'm all
Mm-hmm.
excited. And then he never shows up for the
Mm-hmm.
appointment. He never comes and gets you. It's not frequent, it's so infrequent. Sometimes he's in your life and sometimes he's not. And I didn't understand that,
Hmm.
very, very confused as a kid.
I can imagine. I can imagine. Hmm.
Yeah. And it
In
was
like your
like,
teenage years.
in my teenage years, I started to know what it was. I
Mm-hmm.
really, really did, because it wasn't just my father, it was
Mm-hmm.
his brothers, it was my uncle, my grand uncle, it was my grandmother, and I started to see these patterns and I didn't understand why.
Mm-hmm.
At that age, I didn't understand what I call the sorrow that brings you to that point
Mm-hmm.
of using. I just knew that I didn't really want to be around them as a teenager. You're kind of like, those people are, they're embarrassing. There you go.
Mm-hmm.
Teenagers' famous words, right? They're embarrassing, and I don't really know how to be around them. I don't know how to deal with them, and they're not consistent.
Mm-hmm.
They were not really consistent in my life. And I think my family, my mom and them kind of wanted me to have a relationship, but not really, because they didn't want me to get hurt.
Got you. Got you. Trying to protect you,
Mhm.
but still allow you to be around them, but then watching you at the same time.
Mhm.
And I want to say something. You were daughter of addiction.
Yeah.
One thing that we say, and that's what it's like.
Mhm.
When we say that, that's what that means,
Mhm.
that you are a daughter. And so am mine. We'll go into my story another day, but that's why we say that so big.
Mhm.
And how are you today with this particular
So,
parent?
so there's a big gap in there. There's a big gap of transition for me of a lot of work that I had to do. Um, because as a young teenager and in my early 20s, I was angry. I
Hmm.
was super, super angry at my father.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't understand why this thing you're doing took you away from being with me. Am I not lovable enough? Am I not good enough? What's going on here that, you're always out there sort of partying, as the adults would say,
Right.
partying. And
Yes.
I thought literally at some point that it was really partying, that they're going out to these fun parties, having a really good time, not understanding that no, you're out there using because you're in your addiction.
So much deeper. So much deeper.
Yeah. So I was hurt. I
Mm-hmm.
was, because that anger comes from, I'm hurt because you're not being in my life. I'm hurt because we don't have a relationship. And growing up as a teenager, I did drink, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and I didn't get into drinking until later, my later teenage years, but I did start drinking. And what I found in college was that, oh, I could get a really high tolerance really quick.
Ah, because
And
because us being born from that, it's already there.
yes,
It's already in us.
yes.
So just one drink can take us so much further.
Oh, and it did. My tolerance was super high. I drank a lot. Or I had experiences with blackouts when I was in
Mm,
college. There are time frames that I don't remember because
right.
I drank so much.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember at that moment feeling like, oh my gosh, this this seems familiar,
Hmm.
to my father, to my uncles, and I don't want to be that.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't want to be that. So for me, faith has always played a part in my life. I've always had some form of a relationship with God. And, I remember I did those things that people do where you drink too much and you hug the toilet bowl and you pray to God, like, please, God, if you let me get through this, I'm never going to do it again, kind of thing.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I did that a couple of times. And then there was this moment, this real come to Jesus moment, where it was like, oh, I can't do this anymore.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I realized I don't like the taste of alcohol.
Hmm.
I'm drinking because I was going through really a deep depression at the time. And there were a lot of deaths in my family constantly. I lost my stepsister and my stepbrother and cousins and grandparents, all of this within a year's time frame.
And going through
And
that, the answer was alcohol.
right. And I used it to numb myself. And I realized I couldn't do this anymore because I was becoming addicted.
Mm-hmm.
And I got really clear with my relationship with God that that was addiction and I didn't want any parts of it. So I made a commitment to stop drinking at that time. I stopped drinking in my mid to late 20s permanently.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I've never done any other substances. So I didn't do, how people say, oh, everyone uses weed and everyone does that. No,
Mm-hmm.
everyone does it because I've never done it a day in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I stayed away from those things because of my uncles, because they were addicted. They'd had used heroin and other things. And I didn't want any of that in my life. I knew I wanted to be something.
Mm-hmm.
And, fast forward to where I am now in my career is that for me, what addiction did for me is it propelled me into the field of social work. It made me want to help people. It made me want to understand what the hell is addiction and
Mm-hmm.
and why does it have such a hold on
Such a
people?
hold, yes. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so I spent a lot of time in college and early in my career really learning about addiction and learning about what is it? Why does it do these things? Why do people stay in addiction?
Hmm.
and I have been absolutely positively blessed to have the clients that I have served over these years in three different states. Um, they have been my greatest teachers,
Hmm.
and they helped me to understand addiction and what it's really like from their perspective.
Hmm.
And that helped me forgive.
Let me ask you a question. So you said with the way you went about it was your faith.
Mhm.
There's so many ways when we come to that point of saying no more that we do. We have meetings. We have going to help to professional help and
Mhm.
counseling. So many different levels to go to. Talk about your faith though, and how it helped you.
My faith is one that always needs work. Let's say that first. It's like a muscle. It's something that has to constantly be worked to get stronger. And over the years, because of what I learned, I grew up with so many different religions and I was blessed. My grandmother was a Baptist and my best friend was AME Methodist.
Hmm.
And I went to in elementary school, I went to a Lutheran private school. And in high school and in college, I went to Catholic school. So
Wow.
I had all of this foundation growing up where religion was a part of not just Sunday, but it was all throughout my week.
Hmm.
And that relationship with God and reading the Bible and having, Bible study at school and raising your hand and asking questions so that I could future build a personal relationship with God, with the divine. And what that did for me was give me compassion.
Compassion.
And that compassion opened the door for me to have forgiveness because, the divine God creator has forgiveness, forgives us all the time.
All the
And it was
time.
and it was like if I wanted that for me, then I had to give that to family.
Hmm.
I had to give that to the fathers in my life, to my uncles and all of those people because I wanted the same thing, but they deserved it. When
Hmm.
I really understood how the drugs altered your brain, altered your thinking, which in turn alters your behavior, then it became something that it was out of control. As they say in the 12 steps, you're out of control. You're not manageable.
Hmm.
And God got me to that point of seeing that and knowing with my thing of drinking, by the grace of God, there go I.
Two. Mm. Yes. I love how you said forgiveness. And like I said, we'll have my dad on next week. But I know with me, forgiveness was huge
Mhm.
because what they say, if they know better, they do better.
Right.
But our parents had us at such a young age.
Yeah.
So how much did they really understand? So how can we blame them for what they did at 15, 16?
Mhm.
Because they're still children.
Right.
But that forgiveness is huge. So like you, I had to forgive him because
Mhm.
he didn't mean to hurt me
Right.
because he hurt himself.
That's it. And that's the number one thing. If I want anyone to learn anything about this, if you've got any family member in your life, someone who is using substances, abusing them, and is addicted, know that the pain that you feel, I know, is immense. But the pain that they're going through is almost 10 times that. It is so great. And sometimes they're so stuck. They can't find their way out of it sometimes because they don't have the faith in themselves to
Hmm.
even do it, let alone that a program or something else is really going to help them. Because sometimes they're just so beaten
Yes.
and,
Yes.
and almost feeling broken that they're not sure it's going to work. Not that they don't believe in you or love you, it's they don't really believe in
Mhm.
themselves.
Did you ever have an opportunity to speak with your dad or your uncle about the addiction and how it what it played a part in your life at all?
Very good question. I did not. My addiction story is a little different than hopefully a lot of people. My uncles died in their addiction. They never found recovery. My dad did not find recovery at all. So there was never a conversation about, hey, your recovery means this much to me. I'm so happy that you changed. They never did. They might have switched drugs of choice, but they never stopped using. So all of my uncles are have passed away. One was not an addict, but all the others were, and
Mhm.
my dad was as well, and they died, and that addiction took them out.
Right.
It really did take them out. So I never was able to have the conversation, because for me it's like I wanted to have a sober conversation,
Conversation.
with them when they weren't using, and that opportunity I was never given because they were never sober.
Wow. Wow. That's each of our lives are so different,
Mhm.
and our story is so different.
Mhm.
You know, you have any final words?
Yeah, I just want to say that for me, I'm the recovery story.
Hmm.
So in my family and in my life, my fathers, my uncles, they didn't get a chance to recover, but I have. I've recovered from the damage of growing up as a daughter of addiction. And in that world, and in that life, I'm able to love them
Hmm.
now. I'm able to understand the addiction without any malice,
Hmm.
without any of that bitterness or anger. I understand how the drugs had a hold of them, and I don't fault them for that. And by me being able to forgive, that's recovery,
Hmm.
you know, and creating a new life, and a life that doesn't revolve around drugs. I don't use drugs today. I still don't drink. I've never tried any of the other substances. I don't plan on it. So I am that story of recovery for that family, for that side, for that lineage of my father.
Hmm.
So recovery is not just about the person who's using the drugs. It's also the family members of recovering from the anger, from the hurt, from the wounds, all of that
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah, I'm that testimony for them.
Hmm. Well, we are once again Rochelle and LaShonda. We are the co-founders of Mary Carroll's Foundation. And LaShonda will put up the website in a hot second. But you want to know more about us? Click on the link right there. It'll tell you who we are. We're telling stories all month long, personal stories, talking about recovery, talking about addiction, how it has affected us in any sort of way. Come join our lives. Be with us. You want to have something to say? You definitely can. But thank
Yeah.
you so much, Lashonda. You want to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, by all means, I was agreeing with you about, if you want to say something, please do. If you want to ask us questions,
Let's have a
ask us
conversation too.
questions. Yeah, here's the deal. I'm not going to claim we're the biggest experts of anything, but if you ask us, we'll tell you our experience. We'll share the things we know. If you need help or assistance, we'll do our best to give you some resources and some guidance about that. We don't want you struggling. If you're a person who's in addiction and you're watching this, we don't want you to struggle. You deserve so much more. You deserve so much better. The website that you're seeing is our foundation that we started. Rochelle and I are going to do sober homes, recovery homes, and that's going to start later this fall. So if you're in the Georgia area and you know someone who may need a home, a female, we are going to have that open for you later on in this season. But definitely do not struggle alone, and don't struggle in silence.
Right. And also, we're just two women that want to help. And that's our main thing. Telling our story, sharing resources with you, just women that want to help you wherever you are. And like she said, we're not experts, we're not pros. We're just here having conversations and sharing information. So thank you so much for coming on, for listening whenever you listen, and look forward to seeing more of us next week. Have a great night.
Good night.
Good night.